President Trump is reacting to Iran's retaliatory attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar. Fox's Rich Edson reports.
The president taking it to social. He says Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired. 13 were knocked down. One was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction.
The president says no Americans were harmed. President Trump is set to travel to The Hague tomorrow, where he'll meet with other NATO members to discuss defense spending.
He is going to try to convince the other 32 member nations to increase their defense spending from 2% of the GDP, which 22 out of the 32 NATO countries do right now, to 5%. So much of the focus and the concern over the last couple of years here in Europe has been on Russia. Now it is shifting to Iran.
That's Fox's Peter Ducey. America's listening to Fox News.
Your 710 KURV AccuWeather forecast. This evening will be clear and humid with a low of 77. For tomorrow, partly sunny, breezy in the afternoon, a thunderstorm in one or two spots. Tomorrow's high 93. Tomorrow night, mainly clear with a low of 74. Wednesday, variable clouds with a thunderstorm in parts of the area for the afternoon. Will reach a high Wednesday of 91 to 95. Thursday, mostly cloudy, an afternoon thunderstorm in spots, high 91 to 95. I'm AccuWeather's Drew Shannon on the Valley's official weather station, 710 KURV.
For the latest news
happening now,
and to find out what's happening in rich, clear audio, just say, Alexa, play 710 KURV.
Thanks for joining us this Monday afternoon. You're listening to News Talk 710 KURV, your 956 drive home. I'm Zach Cantu, along with the living legend, Davis Rankin. In the event a tropical system were to threaten the valley, trust 710 KURV to keep you informed during hurricane season. Tropical Coverage 2025, made possible by McAfee Insurance, Lee's Pharmacy, and Mike's Plumbing, Electrical, and AC. We now head to the state capitol up in Austin. Harvey Kronberg from the Quorum Report. Lots of discussion and commentary and who's who on this. Now it's two heavy hitters. It's the governor of the triumphant governor of the mighty Republic of Texas, Greg Abbott, and Dan Quixote, the lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick. I'm glad you got that reference. I was taking a chance there. He's fighting windmills now. So last night was the veto on the THC ban. Dan Patrick reacted how?
Well, he had a temper tantrum on Twitter and then had a press conference this afternoon where he tried to make his case, but like the last press conference where he ended up throwing bags of gummies at reporters, it pretty much fell flat because, frankly, he's selling something that nobody believes.
And he was the only guy going around and talking about that, wasn't he? He was the only official, because even Sid Miller really didn't want a part of it. He kind of was in the beginning. He had changed his mind on that. He's like, well, maybe there is something to talk about there, but he wasn't vocal about it at all.
Even President Trump has supported decriminalization during his last two campaigns, frankly. So it is a constituency of one. It's a highly motivated constituency. I am writing a column at the moment where I refer to him as a geriatric scold.
Good Lord, Harvey. The scold is okay, but geriatric, that's too much. That's out of bounds.
Hey, as one geriatric, I can, as somebody that's almost within a year of his birthday, I can use the term geriatric.
You didn't call him an old fart. That's what you ought to do.
You can borrow the Dan Quixote line, by the way, just letting you know.
Is there any evidence? Is there any evidence to support what the lieutenant governor says, which is that it's getting into the hands of young people, whatever, and screwing up their lives?
At the epidemic state that he was trying to paint it.
It is. There are no prohibitions or ways to currently to prevent minors from having access to THC products. That is correct. And the science does say that THC, products, if you're under 25, will negatively impact your mental development. That is pretty much indisputable. The question is how you deal with it. And since we have been pretty successful, not completely successful, in banning liquor from minors, they're talking about using essentially the same distribution system, which is liquor stores. Let me simply say that this was the longest veto message I have read in my almost 40 years of doing this. And in the course of it, he makes his case why he won't do the ban, but he lays out like 30 different items, which if the legislation that comes out of the special session includes, this is what he's willing to sign. And it was a pretty clear and specific rebuff of the lieutenant governor. Typically, the only leverage the lieutenant governor really has in these circumstances, and something that he's quite good at, is taking a legislative hostage. So there is no way that a THC ban would have passed in the regular session had he not held teacher pay raises hostage until the THC ban was passed. He proudly in the press conference today said there were over 104 lawmakers that voted for this. Well, who cares about the senators? They do what they're told. But in the House, I can almost promise you there weren't 30 votes out of 150 for a THC ban, absent the threat of denying teachers a pay raise yet again after this will be the second time in 4 years.
And what's Patrick going to do? Is he going to primary the governor? That's not going to happen.
You could.
No, he's trying to cast the governor as supporting an unconditional recreational ban and saying that the next episodes of terrible things that happen will be at his feet. And he even tried to link the 5,000 THC selling stores with the cartels, which
what?
What? Yeah.
How did he do that?
Oh my God!
By inference only, no evidence. But he doesn't.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we're back to.
Oh, I saw a
Coyote.
quote from Dan Patrick saying that, well, if this is the hill that Dan Patrick is dying on, and if the people of Texas end up voting him out, then so be it. He says.
I have a serious question. If his former chief of staff is lobbying for medical marijuana folks,
yeah,
right, on behalf to create barriers to. Yeah, barriers to entry.
I do
for
not
other
know
entrants.
how people behave behind closed doors. So is he willing? He must really believe it to put up with all this grief, or
yeah. The hire of Logan Spence is his name, and Logan's a good conservative Republican, but just like Dan Patrick's political consultant, a guy named Alan Blakemore, they are routinely hired not because they can persuade the lieutenant governor, but it's better not to have them on the other side. I don't know of anybody that has hired either Logan Spence or Alan Blakemore, two people closest to Dan Patrick, who would be willing to say that their participation was actually successful in passing legislation on their behalf.
How does
it's just.
I'm sorry.
They're just gatekeepers. They're just gatekeepers for all practical purposes. But
I always wondered what the conversation's like behind closed doors.
Oh, sorry. We're speaking with Harvey Kronberg from the Quorum Report up in Austin, joining us on 710 KURV.
There's a reason why I asked. And I don't know if this. I don't know. Did the lieutenant governor or does the governor get somebody in there and he just reads them the riot act up and down, demeaning them, or is it something more subtle? Because if it's the first one, I would think after a while people go, you build up a resistance among the troops.
Well, the Daniel Hodge was chief of staff for Attorney General Greg Abbott, and then Governor Greg Abbott for probably 10 years, and has overnight become a multi-million-dollar lobbyist. And I think on the edges, for parochial matters, he probably does have the governor's ear. But on big political matters like this, where you've got huge inflamed constituencies, they can't really move the needle. So Logan, who was chief of staff for Senator Patrick, then Lieutenant Governor Patrick, I don't think is the driving force at all. It's just simply helpful to have him on your side. But he's not determinative in this matter, in this issue.
I don't want
to. For the heat that's been generated, every House member and senator had to go back over the last couple of weeks and face, hordes of angry talk show hosts and hordes of veterans. And I don't think there's a single conservative talk show host that hasn't opposed, if not outright excoriated, Patrick for this intrusion into what they perceive as personal liberty.
Yeah, they've
So-
said some pretty interesting things. I've been listening to them. Harvey Kronberg from the Quorum Report joining us on 710 KURV. Now, it's special session season, huh? What do you think is going to be on the list for this agenda?
Well, first of all, the most important thing to note is that there's nothing on there that is so important that it has to pass that Patrick can hold it hostage in exchange for the THC ban again. Remember, the only way it passed the first time was because he held teacher pay raises hostage. And there wasn't a member in the legislature that didn't absolutely have to vote for teacher pay raises and deliver them. There's nothing on the call thus far that will damage the state or damage the governor if it fails. And so the lieutenant governor so far has no hostage material. And what the 6 items that he put on there, the 5 items are pretty mechanical. The only one that might have some sparks is there's some criminal justice reforms that he wanted that didn't get done. But I don't think I don't think that's big enough. That constituency is a lot more fragmented than the anti-THC ban constituency, which is loud and unified right now. So what is notable is that the governor did not put congressional redistricting on the call.
Oh,
And I think that is wise, because if they draw those districts any narrower, and right now these are pretty reliable Republican districts, but remember in Trump 1.0 in the midterm, Republicans surprised everybody, but they lost 2 congressional seats. If you make them any smaller in terms of Republican voters, instead of gaining the 3 or 4 seats that Trump wants, they're in peril of losing 1 or 2 seats. And I think the governor recognizes that and is frankly saving the president from himself on that one. In the current configuration is such that it's hard to see any of the Republican congressional delegation in Texas losing. But if Trump's disapproval numbers, negative numbers, continue to increase, anything is possible. And to create new districts and scramble up maps is not a strategy for success.
Yeah, especially since there's a good chance that a redistricting could backfire because.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think that they're in danger of losing 1 or 2 already. If you change the maps, a district that voted 60% for Donald Trump in 2024, in 2026, that's not a big enough number. That could be a swing district.
It's gonna be tough for them to win an election where Trump is not on the ballot. Like, they can say Trump is on the ballot all they want, but they need to be as fired up as about some of these candidates. And I guarantee you, there's a good chunk of voters who have no idea who any of these people are.
you don't think
for.
that if it prevails that the United States, Donald Trump has knocked the mullahs out, doesn't that go a long way to helping him?
Today it does. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Iran is obviously a shell of its former self, but we could have a more extreme government emerge. We could have Iraq decide to come in, and they were at war for 15 years through hundreds of thousands of casualties on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not painting any apocryphal outcomes. It's just that today it looks like we had a very successful muscular foreign policy, and that is satisfying. That's affirming for the president, and I think definitely helps him. But we're talking 18 months from now. What does the world look like as a result of this?
Hey, when would a special session be?
July 21st.
July
I
21st.
think the date.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for
moving
that date then.
my travel plans around. Making anybody stay in Austin in July if they don't have to is cruel and unusual punishment.
But you have air conditioning, Harvey. What's the problem?
Oh, you're wearing a suit and tie and walking up a hill to get to the Capitol in 107-degree temperatures, and there ought to be a shower right next to the metal detectors.
I know we're lucky that the governor doesn't want to punish anybody by telling them to hold the legislature outside for these sessions.
Oh yeah.
You're listening to News Talk 710 KURV. Thank you to Harvey Kronberg from the Quorum Report up in Austin. We got lots more headed your way after this on 710 KURV.
Later on, after the 956 drive home, stay tuned.